ask you a question, and that is, what is in your life's blueprint?
This is Jeremy Till, the host of the Operator Podcast. We'll be taking you on a journey with us, interviewing some of the top performers in their field on how they operate and get the job done. At the end of the day, we want to be our best. We're going to help provide the information, the data, and the science of how to achieve that, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Let's go! Let's go! It's not every day you get to go interview an Olympian athlete. Chad Vaughn is humble, to say the least. He was in the Olympics in Greece 2004 and in the Olympics in 2008. The man was born with a club foot and still strived throughout his youth into his young 20s to become an Olympian athlete. And if you sit down with Chad, he would never really even bring up the fact. The dude has massive quads and is pretty impressive in the sense of his strength and just who he is as a person. And what's cool about it for me is I've known Chad for the last 8 years, and his overall growth as a person and just sharing his story has been tremendous. And, you know, at the young age that he is, I can only see him being a major influence in the sport of Olympic weightlifting and coaching in general. You know, Chad is such a genuine, awesome person. It was a pleasure to go to Belton and get to interview him. We traveled to go see him. And after talking with him and visiting with him, I was just blown away by his humility, his ability to share, and just his passion for the sport of Olympic weightlifting. Honored to be with him, honored to be interviewing an Olympian athlete, and just a privilege to spend time with him. So here's Chad Vaughn, guys. It's a pleasure to have us in your gym, man.
Man, I'm excited that y'all are here, and I really appreciate you making the trip.
Yeah, this is like, what I love about this, like you walk in the space and like you pick up the vibe, and it's just like, this is that natural. You got the wood, you got the weights, you know, it's like a real weightlifting gym. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a few CrossFit classes in here now and then, but it's just because we need the space of the room, but it's all hardcore weightlifting in here. Nothing special other than, you know, the platforms and the equipment and just those few basic things that you need. And we're in the middle of the Texas summer, so we have the heat to go along with it, as you can feel as we're sitting here now. Yeah. But yeah.
So we want to kind of give a little intro for our audience about, you know, who you are. And I talked to you about this kind of from a sports standpoint of Olympic weightlifting, for people to kind of get a snapshot of, you know, your accomplishments as an athlete and, you know, where you started and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, you know, the biggest credentials are 2004 and 2008 Olympian. I started Olympic weightlifting back in probably 1995. And at that time, I was 15 years old, to tell you my age. And just was lucky to have a young coach move in, strength coach that was interested in the Olympic lifts. He was just learning them himself at that time, and he thought there was enough benefit from them for us that he started teaching us, and we started doing them a little here and a little there for football. And by the time I got to my senior year, he felt like he wanted to take me to a weightlifting competition. And I was from a very small town in Oklahoma, so we drove down to Dallas for a competition, and I ended up winning that first competition and met some guys down there from the Spoon Barbell Club. And Richard Fleming in particular was the coach that really took me under his wing and kept me going. And, you know, lifted under my parents' carport for the first 2 years as I was going to college, and actually delivering pizza at Domino's Pizza, and got really strong underneath that carport through those first couple years, and started making some noise and a pretty big impact in competitions. And yeah, just ultimately, like I said, that led to the 2004 and 2008 Olympics. Ended up winning the national championships 9 times. Went to the Pan American Games, I think, 3 times, won gold in 2003 and bronze in 2011. held an American record in the clean and jerk for right at about 10 years. It actually just got broken by a 17-year-old, nonetheless. So, but yeah, those are my major accomplishments and kind of a quick overview of how it all went.
Man, that's so good. So, what's unique about Olympic weightlifting is, since you started, we've seen the proliferation of the sport. It's just growing. Younger athletes are coming in. There's more coaches, more development. But, that's what I like to see about people's stories is it wasn't coincidental that you were playing sports, got into Olympic weightlifting, a coach saw your potential, which is powerful, the fact that someone can see, hey, there's potential here. And that cultivated you into, getting that next coach that brought you on. So when you transitioned from your original coach to your second coach, was that kind of like a blessing? He said, hey, go forth and, get a new coach and train. Is that kind of the process that happened? And so, like, what kind of performance and gains did you see when you transitioned coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blessing. And actually one of his major purposes in taking me to that competition was to meet those guys, because, like I said, he was very new with the Olympic lifts, and he was a high school football coach, and that was his love and his passion. And, he was willing to hand me off to those guys. He trusted him, and he wanted me to be as successful as I could, and he felt like that was what was best for me at that time. So it was absolutely a blessing, and I definitely think getting with those guys, especially with Richard, who I've learned so much from, not only them but throughout my whole career, was what needed to happen. And definitely my technique changed and got better. He taught me a lot of stuff there, and got me on an Olympic lifting specific program. And yeah, that's what I did for those first 2 years out of high school. Was back then Richard would actually fax to my mom's work my program, because this was before anybody knew how to email or text or anything like that. So I got my programs for the first 2 years through a fax machine, and then we would talk on the phone, probably 2 or 3 times a week. We did a lot of phone conversations, and I would drive up and visit him every couple months, or he'd drive down and even visit me. So there was a lot of dedication on his part as well as mine.
So you were training in the garage, you were getting programs sent to you, and ever so often, like every couple weeks, you would actually have a coach on site to work with you.
Yeah, it probably wasn't every couple weeks, probably more like every couple months. So I definitely was lucky that I had the ability to maintain mostly what he was telling me to do as I was on my own, training on my own, and I would pick up a few more things here and there as we got together, and then I would work on them and go from there.
So as an 18-year-old doing a program in your garage all by yourself and trying to figure it out, working at the pizza joint, going to college, like, what was inside of you that made you stick to it? Because majority of teenagers, early 20-somethings, are not going to do a program like this. Was it just an innate desire? You wanted to accomplish something? It came natural? Like, what was your commitment level so high for in the early days?
I think it was a lot of listening to Van Halen and AC/DC and that kind of thing, and out there while I was working out. No, that did help a lot, to motivate me and everything else. But really, it's hard to pinpoint what it was. There was something inside of me that kept me going, and one thing was encouragement from Richard, from my high school coach, from my friends and family around me that saw I was doing something that I enjoyed and something that I was good at, and so that was a big part of it as well. But another thing for me is one thing that we can get into a little bit more later if you want, is the fact that I was born with a club foot. So what that is, real quick, is it means that my right foot was developed to the side, and had surgery shortly after I was born and wore a cast on my right foot for the first year of my life. So even to this day, I have a little bit less strength in that right calf, that right leg, and definitely less flexibility in the right ankle, and the calf is about half the size of the left one. And because of that, because of the physical and the emotional deficiency that I had through my younger years growing up, that I had to overcome, I always had something inside of me that wanted to prove to myself, not really anybody else, physical abilities. I didn't want that to hold me back in anything, and you know, I definitely ignored it as much as I possibly could, but it was still obviously there. And so, you know, a big thing for me was football. I loved football, and you know, the fact that I had this club foot, I think, pushed me to a level that I wouldn't have maybe normally been in that. And then, you know, as a young kid, like in elementary, I was terrible at sports like basketball and baseball. But after I figured those out for like one season, I quit. I stopped doing it just because I proved to myself that I could do it. And then I found football, track. I stuck with that, and then ultimately found weightlifting, which ended up being my true passion. And definitely it was that what I call blessing in disguise. I think that really led me to a different level.
So what other influences, and you mentioned your parents and their support, what was their support like, or how does that kind of pour into your story? You have brothers and sisters as well?
Yeah, I have two younger brothers and one older sister. And just my family always very supportive. I mean, you know, from the very beginning, my dad would help me build platforms, and in fact, I was under the carport for about a year, and then he built a building. He used me for an excuse to build a building that he always wanted, a shop, so he worked on that really hard and poured the concrete himself. Built me platforms out there and everything else. So, you know, just things like that. They've traveled a lot with me through the years and supported me in more than I could have asked for.
That's awesome. And so for the audience too, just to get perspective of your strength, like what is your body weight, and then what's the record, or what's your clean and jerk when you're in your peak levels and your snatch?
Yeah, my snatch and clean and jerk now, when I'm in my peak levels, are a little different than they used to be, being an old master lifter these days. But my weight class for the majority of my career was 77 kilos, and that's right at about 169 pounds. My best snatch in that weight class was 150 kilos, and that's 330 pounds. And my former American record was 190 kilos in the clean and jerk, which was 418 pounds.
That's huge. So what's the mindset, and how do you calibrate? Because, you know, as a CrossFitter and Olympic weightlifter myself, is that, you know, I've never done the sport per se, but just lifting, you know, the fine tuning of the movements, the hand placement, the foot placement, the hip placement, all those, you know, aspects. Do you feel like your mind was really fashioned to do Olympic weightlifting as a sport? Because when I think about Olympic weightlifting, I think about like swimming, and to be an Olympian, to be at that highest level, the very finite movements of the wrist, of the hips at certain points, and it is very calculated. Does your mind operate in a way that you can see precise movements occurring as the barbell moves from the floor? How does your mind process that?
Well, I mean, kind of the way you worded it, it makes me think of being a coach. And I think as a coach and a teacher of the Olympic lifts, my mind very much works in that way. I can see, you know, things out of the corner of my eye that freak people out sometimes. Like, how did you see that? How do you even know that I did that? You weren't even watching. So my mind very much works like that as a coach. And, you know, I guess that I had a talent for that as an athlete as well, as a mover. But yeah, it's hard to say, because I believe that there are certain things in that regard that can be taught. And I think that if, you know, anyone out there is interested in the Olympic lifts and they're kind of confusing to them, they don't feel like they're, you know, perfectly suited, I would say, don't give up. I think there are a lot of things that you can learn and that you can practice to get better. One of the things that I teach a lot, one of the most things that I'm most passionate about teaching in regards to the lifts, probably right in line with the squat. I love talking about and teaching the squat, but is how to focus through a lift. And so I think that's a big missing piece of the puzzle that are causing so many athletes that are trying to do the Olympic lifts, something that's holding them back a whole lot.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing with us how you actually teach the focus in the lift?
Yeah, just a kind of a brief explanation of it is I call it a number of different things, and the reason why I've come to call it a number of different things because they're descriptive of what the process is. And so one is simplify your focus, or simplified focus, or the 3Q rule, or the athlete ID. The athlete ID meaning for the athlete their internal dialogue, or for me as the coach, if I'm saying it's an athlete ID, it's the athlete's identification. It's how I identify them. So what cues I'm giving them, what I'm working on with them is how I identify them. But the three, going back to wording it as the 3Q rule, I believe that's kind of, for a snatch, for example, that's the magic number of focal points of things that you should be very aware of, or that things that you should be feeling within the movement of a snatch from a floor all the way overhead to completion. So what I found is that's very hard for athletes to do for a couple reasons. One, the athlete that doesn't really focus, that doesn't think anything, or maybe they just think one thing or snatch, then they're not going to execute the lift the best that it can possibly be executed. On the other hand, athletes that overcomplicate the lift, if their mind is always scrambled, and I can see it, I can see if their mind is just going a million miles an hour, and they're not really able to zero in on a few things, then it's hard for them to simplify that down. But what I mean by three cues or focal points is you have to understand that to really focus on a cue, one, I recommend that it's one word, and that one word can mean something that's as full as a sentence, but you encompass it in one word, and it's what you're telling yourself. Yes, you can visualize that, but most importantly, when you're focusing on those things, one, they're in order, 1, 2, 3. So if I'm telling the athlete to be tight, keep the bar close, that would be tight, close, and then whatever extension cue I give them, extend, then they have to think those in the proper order, and they have to feel those as the bar is moving through those positions. They have to really, really feel it and be aware, be in that moment. Some coaches, athletes would describe that as being in the zone. Well, that's how you kind of force yourself and teach yourself to get in the zone, is to actually focus. And what I find as well, and I can talk about this for 2 hours if you want, but what I find as well is that if you're focusing on 3 positive actions and you're giving everything you absolutely have to those 3 things within that lift, again, it puts you in the zone, but it also helps you, it creates a shield in your mind. So if there's, for example, if I'm in competition and I'm thinking these 3 things and I'm about to go into my movement, and a cell phone goes off in the audience, and so that maybe that person comes up to me, or they have come up to me after the competition and say, man, I'm so sorry that my cell phone went off while you're lifting. I'm like, hey, thanks for the apology, but I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it because I wasn't distracted, because I was so intently focused on what I was doing. Also, it's a shield from those negative thoughts, those negative thoughts that come into all of our minds as athletes, those things that can affect us negatively. And another thing about this is that the saying, you have to believe if you want to achieve, absolutely, you want to believe, and I'm not trying to take away from that, but I want my athletes and myself to be so skilled at this concept of focusing that they can maybe make a lift that they don't believe that they can make. So you can achieve whether you believe or not. And that's really come to light for me in the past couple years as I've been lifting, training less and competing less, and I get lazy. And so if I have a weight on the bar on any given day in training, I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. I just don't feel like doing it today. I really don't think I'm going to make it, and I really don't believe I'm going to make it. But because I can shut that off with the snap of a finger, approach the bar and execute my focal points with 100% of my ability, I usually end up making it. Same thing in competition. I'll, at this point, put something on the bar that I'm just putting it on the bar because it's my 3rd attempt and I've made my first 2. Don't really think I'm going to make it today. I don't want to say I don't care. I do care enough to execute. But I have freedom from the end result, and I'm able to turn that focus on with the snap of a finger. And again, I usually go out there and make it.
So good. Have you been able to see that? Can you transition that, or have been able to use that in your everyday life? Is there any certain areas that you break that down and work with it?
Yeah, I've become more aware of that, and especially as of late, and I try to do that, but it's been very hard for me to make that transition and to really apply that I do as an athlete and that I teach as a coach to my daily life. And yeah, it's something that I work on all the time.
Yeah. So as an athlete, you move through, training. You've moved into a coach. How's that transition been for you? And then, what does that look like for where you're at today?
Yeah, on one level, it's been a little bit weird, especially in the beginning. Well, I guess maybe a couple years after I started coaching, every now and then someone would call me coach. And I still don't really see myself as a coach for some reason. It still freaks me out a little bit when somebody calls me a coach. And, I don't know what it is. I've never called even Richard, who's been my coach for most of my career. I've never called him coach. I've only called a couple people coach in my life, and they've been my high school football coaches. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with me feeling that or not, but I've always felt like more of I'm very passionate about coaching, yes, but I'm probably more passionate about teaching and, just doing anything I can to, inspire people and to help them in that way. And to me, that's looks more like, probably speaking, and speaking meaning, getting up in front of people and telling my story, helping them in that way, speaking on podcast, speaking through writing, speaking as a commentator and stuff like that I've done, more and more of the last couple years, and I feel that's probably where my passion is. But going back to coach, that's what made me realize that I loved teaching so much, and I loved speaking. It actually gave me a voice. Before I found CrossFit, I never wanted to be a coach, but then when CrossFit came around and I was kind of pulled into the community and started coaching, one, I never thought that I would be able to stand up in front of people and run a seminar, for example. And in fact, years before CrossFit came around, I can remember as early as back in like 2003 or 2004, where I started feeling really, really led to tell my story and to speak and to try to help people and inspire people in that way. But I was so far away from believing that I could ever do that. In fact, I literally felt like my tongue was tied, and I knew that I had a strong feeling that it was probably going to happen one day, but I had no idea how it would ever possibly happen. And so when CrossFit came around and I started coaching, Jody, my wife, and I started doing seminars with Ursula, who many people know. She's an incredible weightlifting coach, and she's doing so many great things in the USA Weightlifting and International Weightlifting Federation organizations at this time. But anybody that knows Ursula knows how much she likes to talk and how much she likes to be up in front of people. And Jeremy, I think we did probably a seminar at your gym at one point, and she would lead those seminars, and Jody and I would be in the background demoing. And I remember the first couple, I would coach people and talk to them one-on-one, but I never said anything up in front of a group. I was terrified. And slowly people would ask questions as I was up in front, and I would start explaining, and eventually I started writing stuff up on board, things that I would say over and over and over again. And so I started presenting and slowly developed my own seminar. And so coaching, I'm so thankful for that CrossFit came around and that I became a coach, because it gave me a voice. It gave me that confidence to get up in front of people. And now don't get me wrong, I'm terrified when I speak. I'm scared to come on a podcast, but I have that confidence and ability to do that now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can remember working with you even at CrossFit Austin back in the day, and you were definitely a man of few words. So it's a transition. But, you brought up your wife, Jody, and, how long have you guys been married now?
I better get this right. So we were married at the end of, actually, December 31st, 2005. So maybe that'll give me some points. Actually, I'd made it December 31st, so I would remember it. But yeah, we're working on 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And she was an Olympic weightlifter as well.
Absolutely, yeah. She competed at a very high level as well. Actually, she was the alternate on the 2004 Olympic team.
Mm-hmm. And so, tell us how you guys got connected.
You know, we tell people all the time we feel like we were set up to breed a weightlifter who is, you know, maybe my 7-year-old daughter Ella. But yeah, no, definitely we noticed, looking back, we noticed that my coach and her coach Ursula, you know, would say, hey, we're going out to eat with this group of people, and it just so happened to be those two groups of people that kind of brought us together. And you know, obviously we met through weightlifting and became very good friends. Again, I was from Oklahoma, she was from this area here, so she tricked me into moving down to Texas at some point. But but yeah, we became very good friends. Did a lot of talking over the phone and, you know, visiting here and there, and we ended up getting together. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your daughter, is she in the gym now training, or is she doing any of the movements to Olympic weightlifting?
You know, we don't push her to do anything. We let her make her own decisions in that regard. But she does a lot of lifting on her own, or she'll make up her own CrossFit workout every now and then. Actually, she just made me do one with her the other day after I got done doing a couple CrossFit WODs and some weightlifting programming. I was exhausted, and she actually beat me in 2 or 3 little WODs that she made up. But yeah, she's in the gym a lot with us, and she has to be. And sometimes it's annoying to her, but sometimes she'll just jump in and do it.
Mm-hmm. So with the dynamic of the business and training and you sharing your story, kind of like tell us about like your current business and kind of what it looks like from a coaching standpoint with your, you know, opportunity, your business.
Yeah, currently, you know, the business that we have and own is Vaughn Weightlifting. So we try to run everything through that at this point, even the Power Monkey stuff that we do that, you know, ultimately comes through Vaughn Weightlifting in some way. We owned CrossFit Syntex for a number of years. We sold that, I think, a little over a year ago, and we did that because we wanted to focus more on Vaughn Weightlifting, and that's kind of a part of, you know, what you said earlier. Have you been able to use the simplified focus concept for you in life and as a professional? And that was kind of part of that, because I personally felt like I've gotten into way too many things. Like with CrossFit, has just been such a huge opportunities, and there's so many things that you can do within the community, and so many ways that you can share what you know and help people. And because of that, I've gotten into way too many things. And so we felt like by letting go of CrossFit Syntex, that would allow us to focus more energy and time on Vaughn Weightlifting and some other things that we wanted to do. And we felt like that was the best thing that we could do for the community of CrossFit Syntex, and that definitely paid off and actually worked out better than we could even hope for with the new owners that have stepped in and taken over. So that's been a tremendous help to us in regards to being able to focus on Vaughn Weightlifting and grow it and to make it better and to do all the things that we want. I still have such a long way to go to really simplify my focus towards what I'm most passionate about and the things that I want to do to try to make the biggest impact on this world.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you share that. Is that what you're doing, or is that something that you have a vision for the future? So what is that what you just spoke about?
So Vaughn Weightlifting, honestly, even this was years ago when I was doing like seminars and stuff, it wasn't a business. It was just what we called what we were doing, or what I was doing, Vaughn Weightlifting. And these plates in the background have Vaughn Weightlifting on it. So that's been equipment has been another venture that I've accidentally gotten into. But it wasn't a company until a couple years ago, and it was really through Jody. Jody's really the one that took it upon herself to make that happen, to make it a business, to make it legitimate, to do certain things, to try to grow weightlifting classes, to get a Vaughn weightlifting program on a website. I didn't even have a website until, a year and a half or 2 years ago for Vaughn weightlifting. And so that's basically all been Jody. And Jody's passion is coaching. Again, I love coaching. I'm passionate about coaching, but she is the coach. She's the real coach. She's a very good coach. And the definition of a coach, as you know, teaching is only a small part of that. I mean, you have to be a motivator. you have to be a therapist, so to speak, a friend, and you have to be in it for those people that are in it with you for the long haul. You have to be in it with them for the long haul. And, more than any other coach I know, that's Jody. Jody fits the definition of a coach to me, to a T. And so it's been really awesome to watch her take over Vaughn weightlifting and everything that really is Vaughn weightlifting and run with it. And I'm just here to support her and to coach the classes that I need to coach, to be up in front of the people that I need to help and teach and all that stuff. But again, my day-to-day basis, I'm, one, on the computer programming or, watching videos for online programming and stuff like that. But trying to stay on a routine of working towards that I feel most passionate about, that I feel like I'm most supposed to be doing. So I try, and this has really only been recently where I've really tried to make myself set time aside on a daily basis to read and to write and to take steps towards speaking. I mean, these have been things that I've done all along. I've always written. I've always spoke, especially since I started doing my own seminar. There's always been a segment in there where I told my story to start out the seminar and stuff like that. And so it's just a matter of making it more legit and not something that's random.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So with your story, do you see it as a story of inspiration from childhood to Olympian to Olympic weightlifter to where you are today? Is that kind of where you really see, the whole thing moving?
Yeah, definitely a story of inspiration and an opportunity to inspire people, but within that story, an opportunity to teach people as well. I love to teach people things that can help them, whether that be something emotional or physical, something that can help them be better or to help them head towards achieving the goals that they want to achieve.
So with the growth of Olympic weightlifting in the past, 5 years and your record getting broken by a teenager, like where do you see Olympic weightlifting for the United States moving into the future, and kind of what's your, vision for that look like?
Yeah, I don't know that I really have a solid vision that I can give you. I've just, as I've been since, becoming aware of CrossFit and seeing the growth that's lent to Olympic weightlifting, the sport that I love, I've just been sitting back and watching it and trying to support and help where I can, where I feel like I'm supposed to, and that's what I kind of see myself continuing to do. It's been just unbelievable. I first became aware of CrossFit in 2008, and the first time I walked into a CrossFit gym definitely changed my life forever. But the story that I always like to tell is I remember being in an elevator one time, and this was just right before I became aware of CrossFit, and a guy asked me, I said, "Hey, you're pretty built. What do you do?" I said, "Oh, I'm a weightlifter." And so he says, "How much do you bench press?" And I said, well, I don't bench press, and I tried to stay away from that long story of why I don't do a lot of bench pressing or any bench pressing. And so I told him a little bit about what the snatch and clean and jerk was, and I said I have an American record in the clean and jerk. It's 190 kilos, 418 pounds, because he didn't know what kilos were. And so he said, "Oh, that sounds okay, but I know somebody that can bench press that." So he had no idea, and that was what I knew for all the years leading up to that, is nobody knowing what Olympic lifting was. And then now all of a sudden there's this community of people that understand the Olympic lifts, that they understand the difficulty of it, they respect it. And so it's just been snowballed from there. It's just been a huge change. The sport of weightlifting has grown so much. USA Weightlifting has benefited from that in more ways than I can count.
Is there, anything that you personally would like to share with us about your story? I know that you shared a little bit about your coming up and all that, but is anything you're inspired to share?
Man, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of stuff that I could share. It's kind of hard to pinpoint it down. I think, for me, wanting, having the desire to help people as much as I can. I think, I just want people to realize that, one, don't be afraid of the Olympic lifts. If we're talking about Olympic lifting, kind of going back to that, take your time with it. It takes time to learn. There's a lot of really good information out there that you can get. There's so many good coaches out there. I think for me, when I first started coaching, being a competitor, or being competitive, I got very competitive with other coaches, and so I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the best coach that I could possibly be. And the place that I've gotten to as a coach now is just trying to be a team, with any other coach. And I don't know that every other coach sees it that way, but we all have the same goal, or most of us have the same goal of, we want to help people as much as we can. We want to teach them. We're trying to get them to the same spot, which is helping them to achieve their goals, or as a weightlifter, helping them to lift the most over their head that they possibly can. And so, I think it's just a matter of getting with a coach and having, one of the things that I talk about so much is having enough personal responsibility to make it happen. That's one of the things that's really hard for me as a coach, and one of the things that probably, honestly, leads me away from coaching, is that, one, in the CrossFit community, anyone that's in a CrossFit class or in a weightlifting class has a lot of dedication. I mean, there's no way that you can say that they don't, but I think probably the majority of people don't really have the personal responsibility to be the best that they can be, because to be good at Olympic lifting, for example, most people are going to need to do a lot of things, make a lot of changes that have to take place on a daily basis, not just 1 hour inside of the gym 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days a week, but what are you doing on a daily basis all day long? And then what are those things, for example, mobility, that you're either doing or not doing on a daily basis, after your workouts, before your workouts, during your workouts, that I feel, again, people just don't have that level. And so how many people are actually going to have that personal responsibility to make that happen? And another part of that is that I want people to use their failures, their deficiencies, their deformities, whatever that shortcoming is, to make them better. Anyone that's successful will tell you that they're as successful as they were because they failed, because they had a club foot, for example, that they refused to let hold them back. It was just a part of the process to get you to where you want to go. And so, whatever is wrong with you, I like to say, what is so wrong with you that can make you so good at what you want to do, that can make you so good at what you want to be, that can help you reach the goal that you want to reach. And I promise you, if you'll figure that out and find a way to use that in a positive way, it'll get you there.
No doubt. So I remember the question I wanted to ask is, you have a Live Fearless shirt, and I'm curious to what that means to you. I'm also curious about your tattoos. It seems like since last time I've seen you, got some new ink on your arm. But tell us about Live Fearless to you. I think I know it's something that stemmed from Syntex, but what does that mean to you?
Yeah, this originally came from the original owner of CrossFit Syntex, Richard Vincent, who you know very well. Oh. And so he came up with Live Fearless, and so what it means to him, I think he's probably told me a couple times. I can't really remember, but what it probably means to me, if I think about it, is kind of what I talked about. Just there's fear is always going to be there, but don't let that fear keep you from doing what you want to do. Don't let that fear keep you or hold you back from anything that you want to accomplish. I'm reading a book right now that's kind of helping me put things into place to do what I want to do. And, that fear, I think we fear most what we're supposed to do. Whatever you're most passionate about, what the thing that really tugs on your heartstrings the most, that's what we fear to do. And we have to overcome that. And I think that's what, Live Fearless means to me the most. And then, the tattoos, I have gotten quite a few more tattoos, and I've got more coming, actually, another appointment next week. But this is basically mostly my Olympic arm. This one here is the 2004 Olympic symbol. This in Greek means welcome home. So that was the Olympic motto in 2004. This is the 28th Olympiad. This one here was a limited edition shoe design that Reebok made for me a number of years ago now. So they put this on a weightlifting shoe, and they were kind of testing it out to see if they wanted to put it out there. But ultimately, it was a limited number of shoes that they made. But really cool that they came up with this design here, and it's just a bunch of words that are very meaningful to me, like determined, relentless, overcome, strong, persevere, and they just kind of made a design out of it that just so happened to fit in that spot pretty perfectly. This tiger here is my brother has a tiger tattoo, so I kind of copied him and wanted to have one because he had it, but was our mascot in high school. So yeah, just quite a few Olympic things and things that are meaningful to me. I got a couple other tattoos under here, but
that's awesome, man. Well, I have to ask you, you got that hair and you got this hat and this goatee growing out. Is that anything from the early days, the influence of AC/DC, or you're just letting it roll?
Yeah, well, mostly just lazy and letting it roll. But I have been told, especially recently, that I look a little bit like the AC/DC guy,
the guitar player.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. But
are you? What's your ethnicity? I mean, do you have a Irish or what's that? What's the family line look like?
German and Irish. Yeah, and I also a little bit of Native American.
What's your dad? What did your dad do when you were growing up?
My dad is like athletically, or
no, just professionally. Like, what was his life?
Yeah, so he's worked in for Mobil Chemical. So Mobil, the oil company, they have a plastics division, and he did work there for many, many years. He actually just stepped away from that, and he's driving a truck now. So
got it.
Yeah,
man, it's good to hear your story. And I'm from Lubbock, Texas. My dad was a farmer, and it's like determination, hard work, focus, commitment, consistency, all these ingredients that make the mental approach to achieving our goals successful. And I think that's the heart of America, this culture that is give it to me now, instant, versus that grinding, that commitment to pursuing what it is that our goals and all that stuff. And so I think it's that ethos that our fathers brought into our lives and all that we see kind of permeate into our lives and having this success. Because I'm from Lubbock, it's close to Oklahoma, and I kind of really resonate with your story, and that's why I asked what your father did, because a lot of those life lessons of doing the work translates over into us as parents now. It's one thing I look to do for my children is to teach them. We talk about hard work. One other boxing, Austin has a easy as evil, and we love hard work, and so we always do little mantras. My son says, "Ooh, that looks like hard work," and we love hard work kind of mentality. So that's good. All right, brother. Well, we appreciate you. And last thing, if people want to check out your stuff online, what's the best way to see your websites and stuff like that?
Yeah, so just vaughnweightlifting.com, and the biggest thing on that website is just a weightlifting program that we offer. We have 3-day a week, 5-day a week, and a master's program available. There are kind of modifications that or additions that we put in each of those programs to where you can make it a 4-day program if you want, or a 6-day a week program as well. But that's kind of the biggest thing there. You can keep up with me on Instagram at OllyChad, OLYCHAD. Try to do some regular posts there, as well as through Vaughn Weightlifting, and of course we do a lot of stuff through Power Monkey Fitness, so you can see some of my programs and some of my information on their website as well. And I'd love for any of you guys out there to come to a camp, come to a Power Monkey Fitness camp. That's kind of a week-long adult fitness camp, and it's gotten very popular over the last couple years, and it's I'm so thankful to be a part of it. It's such an extraordinary thing to be involved with.
Awesome. All right, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us on the Operator Podcast. Please join us on our virtual platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we will see you soon.